everybody, could you take your seats? We're going to begin. We have 2 third semester. I know it's that time of the week. It's almost over, 2 more days. We have 2 third semester lectures today. Sara Pimental, followed by Kat Erickson. And then this afternoon, first semesters go to Pat Francisco on how to write a critical essay. Anyone else can sit in if they want. So there you go, honey.
All right. Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yes, so good afternoon. My name is Sara Pimental. Today I will be sharing my research into adult protagonists in fiction picture books, who they are, what they do, and why they matter for young audiences. So in earlier decades, books like Mike Mulligan and his Steam Shovel and Millions of Cats by Wanda Gegg featured adult protagonists. These characters were sometimes eccentric, lonely, or industrious, and they were clearly the center of the story. Yet, over time, some things have changed. A 2011 study by Jessica Danowski surveyed 700 picture books published between the years 2000 and 2010. She found that of over 10,000 characters in those books, only 5.7% were coded as older adults. The vast majority of protagonists were young. Here's Amelia Bedelia carrying a pie with pie truck. Others have also noticed the lack of adult representation in picture books. In a Voicey 2022 New York Times op-ed by Pamela Paul, she asked what would happen if we challenged the assumption that protagonists must match the child's audience's age. Adults are central in children's lives, so why are they missing from their books? Scholarship about human adult protagonists in fiction picture books is also surprisingly limited. Vanessa Juson's research was one of the few texts I found that touched on this topic. She wrote that age is one such social category in children's literature that children's literature helps to construct. Age shapes not only story content, but also how we define literature and its readers. So this program itself exists because we draw that line. Yet children's books haven't always focused solely on young people. Many classic stories invite young readers to observe and critique adult behavior. So today I will share how contemporary picture books are reclaiming the adult point of view, not to shift the audience, but to empower it. And I hope you leave inspired to maybe write your own adult protagonist picture book. So for this research, I focused on fiction picture books and human adult protagonists. To narrow the scope, I excluded non-human characters, those that shared centrality with a child, and nonfiction works. So I do apologize, but this is the last time you'll see Frog and Toad. So in my paper, I grouped adult protagonists into 3 categories. There are probably more, but these were my focus. Naive adults, who are sometimes childlike stand-ins, working adults or occupation-based narratives, and emotional adults, often rigid or emotionally blocked, or just experiencing a big feeling. Adult protagonists offer 3 main benefits to child audiences. This was my thesis, is that they offer empowerment. So children get to know more than the adult on the page. They offer access to adult life, work, and interests. And they offer an opportunity to explore empathy with adult emotional complexity. I will note that some of these picture books can fit into multiple categories, but their primary function provides the benefit to young audiences. So the first function is empowerment. Child audiences receive power from books with naive grown-up protagonists because they can be placed in the position of knowing more than a grown-up. Sometimes these characters are referred to as naive child stand-ins, and a few examples are pictured here. Amelia Bedelia, Officer Buckle, and Gloria. We are definitely human, and we will look at that first. So let's take another look at X Fang's We Are Definitely Human, which was published in 2024. This is a picture book about a grown-up named Mr. Lee who hears a loud noise in the night and goes outside to see what is going on. There, Mr. Lee finds 3 strangers who assure him, "We are definitely human." Imagine reading this book aloud to a class. You can almost hear children at this very moment say aloud, "No, they're not," which happened to me when I got to read this book to my first grader's class for his birthday. There was a long pause as Mr. Lee stared at the strangers, and the strangers stared back. Mr. Lee takes them at their word and invites them inside to his home. His wife believes them, and soon everyone in the whole town accepts their humanity. Meanwhile, child audiences are not so easily fooled. That empowerment, the ability to see through adult misperception, is delightful and validating, and may even invite children to engage in that practice outside of a book, namely questioning the choices and perceptions of grown-ups in power. All right, let's go back in time a little bit to look at Amelia Bedelia, who is a quintessential example of a naive adult character written by Peggy Parrish, published in the 1960s. And I know this is technically an early reader, but hang with me. So in the first book, she's told to change the towels in the bathroom. Those towels are very nice. Why change them, she thought. Turning the page, readers see Amelia sitting in the bathroom, scissors in hand, cutting the new towels into shapes. Amelia Bedelia got some scissors. She snipped a little here and a little there, and she changed those towels. Kids know that you should not be cutting those towels. They see right through Amelia's literal misinterpretations and enjoy the humor. But Amelia was not always an adult. I've coined her the Benjamin Button of Kids Lit. Thank you. After Peggy Parrish's passing, her nephew, Herman Parrish, took over and beginning in 2009, reimagined Amelia as a child in a picture book. This change did not happen in a vacuum. It mirrored a broader publishing trend towards child-centered narratives. But this shift isn't without consequences. And I thought it raised some interesting questions, like what's lost in this change? What's gained? And does humor function differently when aimed at an adult versus a child? When Amelia becomes a child, those same jokes could start to feel like we might be laughing at a peer's confusion instead of finding joy in adults' absurdity. And from a neurodiversity lens or English learner lens, this could raise even more questions. So I emailed the editor, Virginia Duncan. She acknowledged this shift in an email interview, explaining that the goal was to expand audience reach. Amelia Bedelia is a unique character because her appeal comes from the way that she approaches the world. So that works no matter what her age. While young Amelia Bedelia may indeed have more market appeal, I think a grown-up Amelia offered something rare, a chance for children to laugh at the limits of adult understanding without ridicule or discomfort. A subtle but important distinction. So let's look at another book that I think reinvents this category. This is my personal favorite. It's called The Search for the Giant Arctic Jellyfish by Chloe Savage, and she was the illustrator. It's about a bright female scientist who assembles a team to find a giant Arctic jellyfish. This is a beautiful cutout illustration of the ship that they're on. And as they venture out into the Arctic, the jellyfish is hiding in almost every illustration just on the other side. As they search from a big red ship, the giant Arctic jellyfish hides just below. This gives children the cognitive upper hand while still respecting the adult's competence. Dr. Morley is not absurdly stupid or naive. She is rather a competent expert who is merely missing some information. She dives to look for the jellyfish, but all hope for her dream begins to fade and sink down into the icy sea. But just after ordering the boat to turn around, she spots something in the water. Wait, could that be? And the book ends. This story reimagines this category of naive adults. Dr. Morley is not a childlike stand-in, but a competent female scientist who is clearly just missing some information. This choice underscores her persistence towards a goal and even turns the child audience into budding scientists themselves by putting their own observational skills into practice. All right, let's move on to function 2. So if the first way adult protagonists serve child audiences is by empowering them with knowledge, the second is through access to the adult world of work and play. Let's take a look at Hello Lighthouse by Sophie Blackall, which is a deeply researched historical fiction narrative that won the Caldecott in 2019. So in this book, we see a lighthouse keeper go about his daily tasks faithfully for years, all the while keeping a log. Eventually, his wife joins him. They learn that they are expecting. They have a baby. And some few years later, his occupation is made obsolete by automation. The Coast Guard arrives with a brand new light and installs the machine to run it. No lamp to fill, no wick to trim. The keeper's work is done. This story offers kids a glimpse into the past and provides children with the opportunity to reflect on how technology and resources transform adult work over time. Another example of a book showcasing how adults spend their days is The Honeybee Man by Leela Nargi. Inspired by a true story, real Brooklyn rooftop beekeepers, Fred is an older protagonist who keeps bees on his rooftop in New York City and shares his honey with his neighbors. The narrative shows an example of how work and hobbies can evolve with age and how grown-ups can do meaningful things even in retirement. The book also has these gorgeous end papers full of technical information about bees. This is for Rachel Katz. In an email interview with Leela, she said that to write about what can be a vaguely dangerous undertaking involving potential bee stings, falls off roofs, interactions with fire and heavy equipment, the only choice was to present a main character who was an adult. Let's look at one more example by our very own Lisa Young-Plow, written and illustrated. So in Little Dog, Rosa, a lonely artist, adopts a pet. The story is about both of them, but Rosa is clearly the emotional center. Little Dog and Rosa transform from lonely and sad and gray to connected and joyful through Rosa's simple acts of care. Rosa's artwork is no longer gray, but full of color and full of Little Dog. This story shows how adults can change and grow and form new connections in any season of life. In an interview, Lisa emphasized that adults can be useful in picture books because they can do more. Kids fantasize about adulthood and being older. We adults are very mysterious. So let's take a look at function 3. We've looked at how adult protagonists empower children audiences, provide them access to adult life. And the third is empathy through unmediated observation. Let's take a look at Leave Me Alone by Vera Brosgol, about a very grumpy grandma who needs to get some knitting done. There is a large gaggle of children in this book, but because there's so many and they're nameless, I included it in my research. So grandma wants to knit. She finishes up some chores, packs a bag, and heads for the hills. Leave me alone. Imagine children at this moment, like, whoa, that grandma just left. She gets grumpier and goes into the woods, which offers no solace. She's bothered by bears and mountain goats, and so she heads for the moon, where she is met with aliens. She shouts again, "Leave me alone," and disappears into a wormhole. Min Lay, last residency, had a great lecture about the escalating absurdity here, but what are child thinking in this moment? Maybe, wow, that old lady is not happy. And most children, especially those with siblings, know what it's like to have some big feelings and want some peace and quiet. Grandma finds it inside a wormhole where it was perfect. She finishes her knitting projects and returns home to share them with her family. Children get to see that even grown-ups need some space now and then and have big feelings of anger and annoyance that they have to navigate and find ways to care for themselves in order to care for others. In the story Thank You, Amu by Oge Mora, she spends her day making a savory stew. Different people in her community smell the stew and come to her door to ask for a taste. She shares her soup with a little boy, a police officer, a hot dog vendor, and several more people, even the mayor. And when it's finally time to eat, Amu finds that her pot was empty. Her disappointment is palpable. She has a frown on her face and her shoulders are slumped. Again, imagine a child audience likely being able to relate to intense feelings of hangriness. Children have opportunities here to witness Amu's disappointment firsthand until knock, knock, knock. To her surprise, the community she fed is back with food to share. Her heart was full of happiness and love. It's a full emotional arc presented without a child intermediary. That moment of unfiltered adult emotion invites children to engage in empathy and emotional complexity and see that grown-ups are quite similar to themselves. So, in summary, adult protagonists offer three main benefits to child audiences. They offer empowerment, when kids get to know more than the grown-ups on the page. They offer access to adult life, work, and interests, and they give them an opportunity to explore empathy. So before we wrap up, let's look at a couple pitfalls to watch for as writers. When writing adult protagonists in picture books, we can beware of stereotypes. Not all grown-ups need to be passive, sick, or lonely, flat or comic relief characters. But when you do write one, how can they transform and change on their own accord? Also, consider the gains. Adult protagonists can take risks, and they can do things that kids can't, like light keeping, beekeeping, or dog keeping. Let's showcase joyful and active adults who are smart, kind, industrious, and central to their community. I will end with this quote from author-illustrator Chloe Savage. "Some dreams are a whole lifetime in the making. In a society which values immediacy over enjoyment of the journey, we need to see more representation of adults who are still on their great journey." So thank you. Big thanks to my first semester advisor, Ari Tyson, for helping me get started in this program. To Swathi for your kind and clear push to improve and focus my academic writing and teaching me the nitty-gritty of close readings. To Lisa for your generous time, thoughtful interviews, and insightful feedback on a topic that was truly fun to explore with such an expert. And Joe Nelson in the Writing Center, Julie Bach and Amy Sheehan for all the support in critical writing and research. I'd like to thank my husband, who I think is tuning in with my kids. I had the joy of supporting him and our family when he went to flight school 10 years ago, and I'm so grateful to get a chance to find a career that I enjoy. And my awesome cohort, No Shelf Control, for our Discord thread. Oh, and my sister, I have you on there. She's tuning in from Amsterdam. Here are my citations. There they are. And now on to questions. Any questions? Yes.
Great job.
Thank you.
I had to that. Great.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about when you kind of saw this as a problem or what instigated this as a question for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole process of trying to like find your topic it's so intimidating. And at first I was kind of interested in looking at memoir in picture book, and that's not really a category, but it is unique. And when I was doing that, I saw a lot of those intergenerational narratives of like a grandparent sharing about the past with a child. And I love those stories, but it got me to start thinking about grownups. And that's when I kind of just fell into that rabbit trail of questions of like, what other stories feature grownups and why are we not seeing a lot of them? So that's kind of how I got there. Joshua.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for this. I was wondering if you could talk about from your perspective as a mom of 3 boys, have you considered like what approach you might want to explore in your own work?
So like, how does this relate? So I do have one picture book manuscript. No, actually, yeah, that's weird. I have one picture book manuscript with an adult protagonist that's like very much in the rough draft phase. But for me, I'm a very formulaic writer, or I like to study like the comps and the sister texts. And so for me, this was an opportunity, like before I move forward in that manuscript, to survey what's going on with all these adults and see what I can learn from that.